let's start with the voices of the people. Here's what I heard in Boston's Copley Square when I asked people to share their thoughts on the outgoing president. President Biden will be leaving in a few weeks. Are you going to miss him?
It's hard to miss somebody that wasn't really there.
He was a good president. He still is a good president.
I don't think I'm going to miss him. He was a vice president of Obama, and it was actually in that administration that I left being a Democrat.
He did all right. You know what I mean? For anyone who does the job, it's a hard job. It's not easy. But I wish he would have did more for people of color.
I mean, the main thing against him is how we basically created that crime bill back in the 90s. But considering how he has grown since then into becoming a more understanding person, he has done more.
I think he tried and he did as much as he could.
Nobody's gonna do enough for black people or people of color or origin. Nobody. You know, if you got money, you're good in America. If you don't have it, you know, like they say, screw you.
Well, I mean, like, if things are better, like, they definitely didn't do it in a way that makes it feel like it's better. You know, like, I heard inflation's down, but I don't feel that.
I wish he was doing another 4 years, but I know his time is up.
What were your reactions to what you heard there, Jacquetta? I know you were chuckling a bit.
I think that it was very generational, right? You could see the younger people with the he doesn't do much of anything or he hasn't done anything. They're not really aware of his history. So I think a lot of it is the rhetoric that they hear on social media. This is not a generation that does their research. So I find that interesting. And then the older people, you know, they are saying, well, you know, I think he did fine. He did what he needed to do. And then the last gentleman said, like, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to do enough for black people.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that because there is a long history here. And Chad, I know obviously this is something that you study. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about who Biden has been throughout his trajectory as a career politician.
Yeah, well, I think those comments reflect that his legacy is going to be very contradictory. Let me just offer this disclaimer. I'm a historian, so I can't predict the future, but I think that his legacy is going to be one of really trying to overcome his past, right? Of addressing really the somewhat problematic aspects of his history. You know, whether we go back to his early career as a senator opposing busing, the 1994 crime bill, certainly when he was head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, his treatment of Anita Hill and allowing Clarence Thomas to sit on the Supreme Court. All of those things really are the baggage that Biden has to carry. And I think he has spent the latter part of his career trying to overcome that, trying to address that, to atone, if you will. And I think a lot of the policies that he advanced, that he was able to shepherd through, whether as vice president, supporting President Obama, and as president, you know, have been beneficial to many African Americans and people of color more broadly. But I think at the end of the day, that ledger is going to have to be measured against, you know, his past and what he was able to accomplish as president, and also the legacy that he's leaving behind. Will we remember Joe Biden as the president who let Trump win again?
I think with Biden, I think you're right. It's going to be very contradictory because how do you atone for those things without saying, well, I really wanted the power, so I did what I needed.
And he's always been a product of his times as well, so it's important to account for that.
And Michael, Jacquetta mentioned how we have this older generation, right, that has a lot of admiration and respect for Biden, and we know that a lot of Black Americans of that generation helped him win in 2020. Look at South Carolina and all the work that Jim Clyburn did to motivate those voters to get to the polls and push him forward. Is that going to get lost in all this, or was that just sort of a glimmer of hope at that time?
Yeah, I don't think it'll get lost. I think there's something interesting. I've said many times before that I think Biden was necessary, right? That I think if you got a group of congressmen and women, Black congressmen and women in a room, they would talk to you about he wasn't the ideal option for president. He was the necessary option for president that first time. That they really felt like in order to beat Trump, it took a white man with his political background to appease those in the middle and win. So I think for many Americans, Black Americans, and I did my own little street poll, folks think fondly of him.
What'd they say?
They said screw you. I didn't get the screw you part. But older folks remember him as being loyal to Obama, right? They remember him. So you don't get a lot of deep policy conversations on the street because I think, as Jacquetta might recognize, is that people don't necessarily, I call it the policies below the waterline. If you think of the iceberg, a lot of stuff that happens, you won't see it necessarily in the eggs, the price of the eggs and the cheese. It's whether black businesses got investments, it's whether loan repayment has happened, and under the Biden administration, 2.6 million black jobs,
Can't forget
were
that.
created under the Biden administration. The problem is some of that is episodic with bills, the American Rescue Plan Act, the infrastructure, bipartisan infrastructure bill, the Investment Reduction Act. That's sweeping bills that sort of lifts tides and black folks sort of benefit from it. What black folks want is structural change.
That's right.
Right. We want to get to policing reform. We want to get to Voting Rights Act. And unfortunately, as much as we tag Biden for not delivering in all those places, you really can't do it unless you control the House and the Senate.
Exactly. But he did deliver on a number of things, at least tried to, right? Tried to push through student loan debt forgiveness.
$136 billion. He did forgiven loans.
Yeah. Yes. And also, of course, just did the largest single-day clemency act, right? Which affected many nonviolent offenders,
To
but
your
also
point of
some
atonement.
people who are big
And I think he has to do more in that area. I mean, he's got an
Absolutely.
opportunity here in the next few weeks to really address that problematic past stemming from the 1994 crime bill to actually do something that matters to the lives of generations of black
irony
folks
of
who
it
have been
all.
affected by mass incarceration.
You're the architect of mass incarceration.
Certainly exacerbated.
Sure. And now he's trying to atone for that. So I think I think that's his legacy, is like, yes, this is who I was at the time I needed to be in history. But now I'm older, I've thought about these, I hear real life stories, and so therefore I'm going to try to correct what I did. And that's really the growth of a person, right? You want somebody who says, I made the bad decision, I need to correct the course.
And while history will reflect kindly on him, I think as we look back, and again, I'm talking policy, right? So child poverty, and particularly black child poverty, the child tax credit, the expansion of that. Again, I mentioned black businesses, the invest in black businesses. The reality is there'll be a great story to tell about what he did for black people, and then black people will catch up to the story, right? I call it the truth catching up to history, right? The problem, though, is that what we wanted from him, and I think this goes back to even his crime bill days and his work on the judicial nominees, is his boldness to disrupt, his lack of willingness to be disrupted. We see that in Trump. Trump will disrupt, and I think the Democratic Party wanted that out of their candidate and their president, which is use this opportunity you have.
But it's a question of whether the Democratic Party is really ready to disrupt itself, right? I mean, they say, when you go low, you go high.
It's important to recognize that Biden is not a disruptor.
Yes.
He's an institutionalist.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
He's a firm believer in the institutions of the country, particularly the Senate. He has great faith in these institutions when black folks are inherently and justifiably so skeptical of them. So there's a dissonance here that I think we need to recognize, right?
And
He's
the
not going to be the movement builder.
And Biden and Clinton, with that crime bill, was trying to accommodate the Republican Party. So that was their compromise to get a win.
Yeah, the triangulation.
And that compromise came at our
Now,
cost.
what about with young voters? I mean, because so many people were really pushed away from the Democratic Party this election cycle. Part of it was because they just didn't feel like there was any relevance. So how do we think that Biden turned them off?
I don't think Biden turned them off. I've been saying this for years now. The Democratic Party is a problem. And I'm saying this as a Democrat who's worked on Capitol Hill. The issue, I never have issues really with presidents. I have a problem with Congress, because those are the people that make the policies and that they make legislation. But if you look at a lot of congressional people, they don't author legislation. A lot of them are happy to have sound bites on CNN and GBH and all these other places. They are willing to make their power known. They show up to a few holiday parties. But if you look at their record, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. That's what turned off young voters. This generation, Gen Z and the latter half of millennials, they don't care where you went to school. They don't care how much money you had in your war chest. They want to see the work that you did. And Congress is lazy. And not only are they lazy, they're apathetic when it comes to people when it's not an election year. I only have seen my senators in Roxbury, where I live and own a home, around election time. I slammed the door in one staffer's face because I said, I've never seen her here before.
And
Don't come.
Maybe to build on Jacquetta's point. So I think that's the problem with politics and how government works, right? Is we see you when you need us, right? When you need a check, when you need. But I don't think that's unique to the Democratic Party. To Jacquetta's point, what I think was masterful that really outdid Biden and arguably Kamala was Trump's strategy, which was, I'm going to criticize even the Democratic Party, and I'm going to dissuade you from even voting for them. So I don't need you to vote for me.
Yeah, just don't vote for
But
them.
don't vote for them.
Yeah.
And what are they doing for you anyway?
Yes.
What have they done for black
Strategy
people?
of suppressing voter turnout as much as possible.
Masterful.
Those key constituencies.
Now-
I think so much of politics is about communication and presentation, especially for this generation. I think we have to be blunt. Biden was not able to effectively communicate and make the case for his presidency.
Now-
and I think that translated into the lack of turnout, the dissatisfaction amongst younger
Yes,
voters.
we saw this election cycle, but also it's about collaboration too, right, Chad? And so much of just comes from the relationship between the president and the vice president. We know that with Obama, right, Biden had got so much credibility, swag, as one may call it. Dosa Estemwegi from Diaspora Mass told me it was like Obama gave Biden swag,
Sure he
right?
did, yeah.
And so, but did he do that for Kamala, right? What did he give
What's
her?
the opposite of swag? Absolutely. I mean, he was a drag on her chances to win the presidency. And, certainly we can speculate, whether or not she had a viable chance to win in the first place. But I think it's, fair to say that he was not helpful. And, her having to constantly defend herself and her position in the administration and carry the weight of Biden's baggage certainly did not work in her favor.
What's your lasting image of President Biden and his administration? For me, it's literally seeing him in 2020 walk across the street in Manchester, New Hampshire. The sun was beaming on his face. He had on his aviator sunglasses and some pearly whites. I don't know if they were veneers, but they looked good. But that was the one for me. What about you all, very quickly?
It's when he was vice president, which is where I take all of my reverence for him, is when he said this is a BFD about healthcare, because that was important. My mother's a breast cancer survivor. My dad is a diabetic. That's important. Healthcare is important. So I will always hold him in some part of my heart about that.
What about you, Chad?
Well, it pains me to say my lasting image of him is going to be the Clarence Thomas hearings. I had the distinct pleasure of working with Anita Hill as a colleague at Brandeis University, and him not coming to her defense and giving us Clarence Thomas will be something
We still
that,
have.
unfortunately, I won't be able to get out of
The
it.
delegation will trade him.
And my lasting image would be meeting him personally. I had a chance just 6-7 months ago to have a personal conversation with him at an NAACP National Convention. He's a personable guy, right? He's a likable guy. If you go to Delaware, black folks love Joe Biden. I wish that had shown more throughout this campaign and particularly throughout his presidency, but I think the decline was clear and evident. So I'll have that image of sitting with him for a second and having a conversation.
It's a beautiful, lasting one. Well, that is Michael Curry, Jacquetta Van Zandt, and Chad Williams. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.